זה לא שינה, ומיד כשחזרתי הייתה לך הרגשה שאני עוד אוהב אותך, שאני כבר שלך, ואהבת ושמחת וחשבת שרציתי להיות שם תמיד בשבילך, כי ידעתי שככה זה טוב, שלשניים יהיה יותר פשוט לאהוב, כל הדרך אני לצידך. גם אני עוד שומע וגם אני לא יודע איך עושים את זה, איך שזה לא קל לאהוב ללא תנאי. והופתענו כשבא השינוי הגדול, והבטחנו תמיד לדבר, וראינו אחרי שבועות וימים שלא קל לעמוד מול הרגל. גם אני עוד שומע וגם אני לא יודע איך עושים את זה, איך שזה לא קל לאהוב ללא תנאי. שזה לא קל לאהוב.
Good morning, Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom. It's great to be here with everyone again today. Welcome to everyone joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Zoom, and I hope that everybody is having a restful Shabbat. In keeping with the intention that we set out last night, that this Shabbat, we simply want to focus on being. I wanted to start this morning with a short poem to give us a little bit of inspiration for setting our intention for prayer. Each of us today enters this sanctuary with a different need. Some hearts are full of peace and gratitude, overflowing with love and joy. They are eager to confront the day to make the world a better place. They are recovering from illness or have escaped misfortune. We rejoice with them. Some hearts ache with sorrow. Disappointments weigh heavily on them. Families have been broken. Loved ones lie on a bed of pain. May our presence and caring bring them comfort. Some hearts are embittered. Ideals are betrayed and mocked. Answers sought in vain. Life may seem like it has lost its meaning and value. May the knowledge that we too are searching restore our hope and renew our faith. We start with Moda Ani on page 186.
מודה אני לפניך מלך חי וקיים מודה אני לפניך מלך חי וקיים יללי מודה
We turn the page for Matovu.
la
How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. I, through your abundant love, enter your house. I bow down in awe at your holy temple. Adonai, I love your temple abode, the dwelling place of your glory. I will humbly bow down before the Lord, Adonai, my maker. We turn to page 194 for the blessing of healing, Asher Yatzar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher Yatzar et Adam b'chachma, uvrebo nekavim nekavim, chalolim chalolim, galui v'yadua lifnei kisei kivodacha, she'im yiftach echad mehem, o yistam echad mehem, I efshar lihitkayem ule'amod lefanacha. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei kol basar umafli la'asot. We turn the page for Elohai Neshama.
Elohai, Neshama shenatata bi, Tehorai, Elohai, Neshama shenatata bi, Tehorai, Ata birata, ata yetzata, ata nefachta bi, ve'ata mishamra bikirbi, ve'ata atid litla mimeni, ulechazira bi letid navo. Kol zeman sheneshama bikirbi, moda ani lefanecha. Kol zeman sheneshama bikirbi, moda ani lefanecha. Adonai Elohai Elohei avotai. Adonai Elohai Elohei motai. Ribon kol hamasim, Adon kol haneshamot. Ribon kol hamasim, Adon kol haneshamot. Elohai, Neshama shenatata bi, Tehorai, Elohai, Neshama shenatata bi, Tehorai.
Before we start the daily miracles on page 198, we take a moment to really imagine what it would be like if we were able to recognize the blessing of each and every one of these different daily miracles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has created me as a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. We turn to page 204 for the blessings for the study of Torah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidashanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you, by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Please join me in English on the bottom of page 206. These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
We turn to page 212 for Baruch She'amar.
Baruch She'amar v'haya haolam, Baruch Hu, Baruch She'amar, Baruch Hoseh Bereshit, Baruch Omer ve'oseh, Baruch Gozer u'mekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem Sachar tov lireav, Baruch chai la'ad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch bodeh u'matzil, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo, Baruch atah Adonai melech mehulah batishbachot.
With songs of praise, we extol you and proclaim your sovereignty, for you are the source of life in the universe. One God, life of the universe, praised and glorious ruler, your name is eternal. We turn the page for Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat.
Mizmor Shir leyom HaShabbat, Mizmor Shir leyom HaShabbat, Mizmor Shir leyom HaShabbat, Alay, 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 alay. Mizmor Shir leyom HaShabbat.
Before we start Ashrei on page 215, we take a moment and reflect on how thankful we are, how Ashrei, praiseworthy we are to be in such a wonderful community. Ashrei, page 215. Tehillah l'Rabbi Mincha Elohai Melech V'Shimcha Le'olam Va'ed.
בכל ימיך והלל שמך לעולם ועד.
גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, ולגדולתו אין חקר.
דולדו ישבח מעשיך וגבורותיך יגידו.
הדר כבוד הודך ודברי נפלתך עשיך.
וזוז נורותיך יאמרו וגדולתך אספרנה.
זכר רבתוך יביעו וצדקך ירננו.
חנון ורחום אדוני, ערך אפיים וגדול חסד.
טוב אדוני להכל, ורחמיו על כל מעשיו.
יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לבני האדם גבורותיו, וכבוד הדר מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל העולמים, ומשלתך בכל דור ודור.
סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזוקף לכל הכפופים.
הנה כהלך יסברו, ואתה נותן להם את אכלם בעתו.
פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל קוראיו, לכל אשר יקראוהו באמת.
רצון יריב יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישמיד.
תהילת אדוני ידבר פי, ויברך כל בשר שם קדשו לעולם ועד.
ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה.
Hallelujah on page 218.
כל
We say that even if our mouths were as full of song as there is water in the sea, we would still not be able to fairly recount all of the blessings in life. Ilu Finu on page 220.
Ilu Finu, male shira kayam, uleshonenu rina, veyadenu frosot, k'nishrei shamayim, v'ragleinu kalot kayalot. Ilu Finu, male shira kayam, uleshonenu rina, veyadenu frosot, k'nishrei shamayim, v'ragleinu kalot kayalot. Ein אנחנו מספיקים להודות לך ולברך את שמך מלכנו, מלך מלכי המלכים, מלך מלכי המלכים. אלופינו מלא שיר הקיים ולשוננו רינה, וידינו פרוסות כנשרי שמיים, ורגלינו קלות כילות.
For every mouth will acknowledge you, and every tongue pledge homage to you. Every knee bend in your presence. Every upright person shall bow before you. Every heart will revere you, and every innermost thought will sing to your name. And David said, let all of my bones exclaim, who is like you, Adonai? As David continued, bless Adonai, O my soul, and let my inner peace praise your holy name. We turn the page for Shochen Ad.
שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני, לישרים נאווה תהילה, בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש. ובמקלות טובות עמך בית ישראל, ברינה ידבר שמך מלכנו, בכל דור ודור. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, שהוא שפחה הלב וזמרה, עוז ממשלה נצח גדולה גבורה, תהילה ותפארת קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך מלכי העולמים.
Please rise in person or in spirit for Kaddish.
יתגדע ויתקרא שמי רבה, בעלמא יברך ירטה וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי תלכו בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם עולמי המעיין יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קדושה בריחו, לעילם ינקוב בחטא ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא, ואמרו אמן.
Baruch Hu on page 226.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevarach Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated. We continue on page 228. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvarech choshech oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. In mercy you illuminate the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai. In wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created, may they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we may all swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot. 230 for the blessing of Ahava Rabbah, or great or deep love. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears who trust you led to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us, truly. You drew us near to your great name that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael b'ahava. Page 232 for Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Please join me on page 234 for Ve'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
We continue in English in the middle of page 236. Adonai said to Moses as follows, "Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all the commandments of Adonai and observe them, so you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. V'yatziv v'ahuv v'chaviv v'nora v'adir v'tov v'yafeh hadabar hazeh aleinu le'olam va'ed. Emet Elohei olam malkeinu tzor Yaakov magen yishenu l'dor v'dor hu kayam u'shmo kayam u'kiso nachon u'machato v'emunato le'ad kayemet. U'dvrav chayim v'kayamim ne'emani v'nechmadim la'ad u'amei olamim. Mimitzrayim ge'altanu Adonai Eloheinu u'mibeit abedim piditanu. Al zot shibchu ahuvim v'romamu el v'natnu yedidim zmirot shirot v'tishbachot brachot v'hodaot lamelach al-chai v'kayam ram v'nisa gadol v'nora mashbel ge'im v'magbia shefalim motzi asirim ufode anavim ve'ozer dalim ve'one le'amo be'et shavatam elav Tehilat la'elyon baruch u'movrach Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lecha anushira v'simcha rabba ve'amru kulam michamocha on page 240.
שיר חדשה שבחוג גאולים לשמך על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ותכינו יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ילה ברוך אתה
We turn the page for the Amidah and we return to our intention, the Shabbat, of spending a couple minutes during the Amidah, stripping away all of the excess baggage that we might have come into the Shabbat with, and just focus on being one with ourselves. Amidah on page 242.
Adonai sefatai tiftach, ufi yagid Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Velohei Avotenu v'Imateinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula livnei bneihem, Lema'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham be'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah rav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkeh chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim berofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishnei afar. Mi chamocha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech mimit umechayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua. ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
מלכים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. We continue silently until page 360.
We continue with Shalom at the bottom of page 260. Shalom imromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen. Ay la 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 Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru amen.
Last night, we had the chance to focus on some big picture Jewish questions. I asked the question of how one defines an authentic Jewish practice, and we discussed a little bit of the tension, a little bit of the dialectic within Jewish tradition about adhering to the traditions of previous generations, while also carrying on a tradition of innovation and evolution. So today, instead of focusing on big picture, I want to flip the script a little bit and focus on some of the small things in life. And to start, I wanted to turn everyone's focus to the first word in this week's Parsha. This week's Torah portion, we start the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. And when one opens a Chumash or a Torah, they might notice something interesting about the way that the first word Vayikra is written. And in fact, we have a millennia-old scribal tradition of whenever Torahs are being written, of the Aleph in the word Vayikra being written about half the size of a normal letter. The Aleph in the word of Vayikra is miniature. And this, of course, begs the question, why is the Aleph small? Why is Vayikra, Vav Yud Kuf Resh Aleph, not written normally like every other word? Why do we have this small Aleph? So we start to tease out what this might mean. And we have a scholarly suggestion that when something is written small in ancient texts, it might be sort of like we would use an asterisk today. It wants to call our attention for whatever reason to this letter Aleph, which of course begs the further question, what might it be calling attention to? And scholars suggest perhaps the fact that the Aleph was written small means that the Aleph was never actually meant to be there in the first place. That the original word was actually Vayikar, Vav Yud Kuf Resh, and it was actually changed later on to Vayikra. Okay, great. So what does this mean? Why is this important? So one theory suggests a very pragmatic, a practical theory that in the ancient world, ink and parchment were sold at a premium. So in order to save room whenever you're writing an ancient text, if the last letter of word A ends with the same letter that word B starts with, as in this week's Parsha, we have the first two words, Vayikra El. Maybe they just saved the ink and saved the space. And the Aleph was both the end of the first word and the beginning of the second word. This theory is very pragmatic, very economical, but as other scholars point out, this doesn't make much sense because we can point to a myriad of other cases within the Torah where word A ends with the same letter that word B starts with, and there are no miniature letters in those cases. So the mystery lives on. So we get to a rabbi named the Baal HaTurim, a great rabbi who lived all throughout the Iberian Peninsula in the 13th and 14th centuries. And he points out we actually need to understand what these two words mean, what the word Vayikra, meaning and he called, compared to the word Vayikar means. So Vayikra is an easy one. We know that the word Vayikra comes from the root Kuf Resh Aleph, Kara. We use this word all throughout Jewish tradition. When somebody is reading from the Torah, we call them a Baal Korah, one who is reading the Torah or calling out the Torah. When we say the Shema, we call it Kriyat Shema, the reading or the calling of the Shema. So we know what the word Kara means. Kara means to call, to do something decisive. Vayikar, as the Baal HaTurim points out, comes from the word Kuf Resh He, Kara, which means to happen. In modern day Hebrew, if you bump into somebody on the street that you didn't mean to bump into, you might say, Ma kara, or what's happening? How are things going? This is such a random chance encounter. How are you doing? And the word kar, kuf resh, all throughout the Torah, actually appears when things happen accidentally. Probably the most famous case is when Amalek, which we discussed a couple weeks ago, bumped into the Jewish people as they were leaving Egypt. The Torah says, Asher karcha baderach. They happened upon them on the streets. So the Baal HaTurim says, well, what's the difference? What does it mean, and he called, or and he happened upon? So the Balatorium creates a dialogue between Moses and God, where Moses, we know the man of humility, somebody who was so humble that he didn't actually want to be the one to lead the Jews out of Egypt, that he started writing this portion, and he wrote, Vayikar El Moshe, that God happened upon Moses. Moses was sitting there, and under no merit of his own did God randomly or luckily happen upon him. And Moses starts writing, Vayikar, and God appears, and God says, Moses, what are you doing? This isn't a chance encounter. I didn't happen upon you. I'm choosing to call you. This is something intentional. This is something conscious. I am Vayikra El Moshe. I am calling to you, Moshe. And Moses, ever the humble one, kept saying, well, no, I don't want it to seem like, you specifically sought me out as opposed to everyone else. And they had this argument back and forth. And finally, they decided to compromise. And they said, okay, great. Let's write a small aleph to represent this compromise. The Kabbalistic tradition takes this idea a little bit further. And they say, what does aleph mean? Aleph, we know the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet. In gematria, in the numerical value, aleph is representative of 1. We know aleph is also the first letter of the word echad and Adonai. So aleph comes to represent God and the oneness of God. And the Kabbalists say, well, what's the difference in life between us viewing everything as an accident, everything as a series of luck or misfortunate incidents, or viewing everything in life with intention, with design, that God has a plan for each and everything? Well, it actually might not seem like that big of a difference. It might be something as minuscule as a small aleph, the lowliest of letters, being stuck in. But that one recognition, the recognition that there is God, there is meaning behind everything in the world, while it may be a small difference, it can make a world of difference when we compare what it means Vayikra, to definitively call out to something, to be the author behind your own actions, to have autonomy over your will, and the person of Vayikar, the person who leaves everything up to happenstance and chance. A couple years ago, I happened upon a fascinating article that was written by an English etymologist. And this article talked about the irony of the word happiness in the English language. This person, she wrote, the word happiness makes no sense, and it's inherently setting us up for failure. Why? Well, the word happiness comes from the Old English prefix to hap. And to hap, when we consider which words in the English language start with HAP, we have happen, haphazard, hapless, happenstance, all things of complete luck, all things that we would say, oh, if it happens, but I'm in no control. Or that's haphazard. It might be dangerous. Or he's a hapless fellow. He was he was the product of a series of misfortunate events. And this etymologist was writing, this almost makes it seem like in Western culture, we are giving happiness up to luck. We're saying if you happen to get lucky, you can find happiness. But there's no journey there. There's no way to actually go out and cling on to happiness, as opposed to just us sitting back and saying, hopefully one day we will happen upon happiness. In Judaism, we forge another path. And I believe that this is the secret of the small aleph, the difference between Vayikar and he happened, and Vayikra, and he definitively called. In Judaism, whether or not we believe that God is behind the universe, or whether or not we believe in our own autonomy of will, our own ability to go out in the world and actually make a difference, we focus in on the first word, on something just as small as an aleph, because sometimes that's all it takes to make a difference. Sometimes pointing out the small things and reflecting on little decisions that we can make each and every day is something that is able to turn Vayikar, something that's happenstance, something that we sit back and hope happens to us, to Vayikra, going out and being the ones to go out in the world and to call. Shabbat Shalom. Before we turn to reading Parsha Vayikra, we ask that Rav Miriam comes as Gabbai.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom. We call to the Torah for the first Aliyah. Tamod, Tidal, Rivka, Bat Shmuel, Leah, Nitza Heneg. I'm sorry, she's going to be reading the Torah. Tamod, Lila Pesner. Sorry.
Don't forget to unmute, Lila.
Okay, there I go. Baruch Adonai Hamburah.
Baruch Adonai
Hamburach Leolam Boed. Baruch Adonai Hamburach Leolam Boed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher B'Rabanu Mikol Hamim V'Tenen Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
ויקרא אל משה, וידבר אדוני אליו מאוהל מועד לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל, ואמרת אליהם, אדם כי יקריב מכם קורבן לאדוני, מן הבהמה, מן הבקר ומן הצאן, תקריבו את קורבנכם. אם עולה קורבנו מן הבקר, זכר תמים, יקריבנו אל פתח אוהל, מועד יקריב אותו לרצונו לפני אדוני.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betohenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach. Yamod, Yamod, Mordechai ben Yehuda, Chaya Kela, Mark Filowitz for the second Aliyah. And our reader will be Evelyn Bell.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bocha banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vasamak ha-do Allah Rosh Aloha Vinirsa La'ao Li'aper Alav Visha'at Et Ben Habakar Lifnei Adonai Vikriv Hu B'nei Aharon Kohanim Et Hadam Visraku Et Hadahan Al Haneze Ach Zavihe Asher Pe'etak Ohel Moed Vaheshi Et Ha'olah Veneta Aho Ta Linta Eha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nota b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Tamod, Malka Bat George, Mila Tserlin, and our reader will be Mike Bell.
Unmute.
Baruch et Adonai Hamavarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamavarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. V'natanu b'nei Aharon HaKohen Eish al Mizbeach. Ve'arhuhu eitzihim al ha'esh. Ve'arhuhu b'nei Aharon HaKohanim et hanatachim et harosh ve'et pader al ha'eitzihim asher al ha'esh asher al ha'mizbeach. Boho ukra'ahav yarhat b'mayim v'hikater hakohen et hakol hamizbecha ola aseh rechanehut le'Adonai.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Nota B'Taheinu. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. Yashikoa. With Maftir Tamod Tamod Esther Basha Bat Abraham V'Yocha Elaine Asa. And our reader will be musical fellow Gabrielle Newman.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Omikol Asher Yesava Alav LaSheker V'shilam Oto Berosho V'chamishitav Yosef Alav LaAsher Lo Yitnenu Beyom Ashmato Vet Ashamo Yavi Ladonai Ya Tamim Min Hatzon Be'ekecha La'asham El HaKohen Vechi Per Alav HaKohen Livnei Adonai V'nislach lo Al Achat Mikol Asher Ya'aseh La'asher Ma'ava.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. We turn to page 370 for the Mishu Beirach for everybody who received an Aliyah this morning. Misha Beirach Avotenu v'imotenu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu Yivarach et kol ha'olim ba'avor she'oleh lechvod ha'makom lechvod ha'Torah b'zchar zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishmarehu v'yatzilehu mikol tzara u'tzuka u'mikol nega u'machla v'yishlach bracha v'atzlacha b'chol maseh yadav Im Kol Israel v'nomar Amen. We turn our focus to page 371. And before we say the Mishu Beirach for healing, we take a moment and give everyone an opportunity to type names in the chat of anybody this Shabbat who's in need of any healing, whether that healing may be physical, psychological, spiritual, any type of addiction, we have everyone in mind this Shabbat who is in need of healing. Misha Berach Avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu Yivarech et Hacholim Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem Lahachmilam Urefualam Ulahachzikam v'Yishlach Lahem Meira Refuah Shlema Min Hashamayim Refuat HaNefesh v'Refuat HaGuf Hasha Ba'agala Ubizman Kariv v'Nomar Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all those who are ill. May the blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say, Amen. We turn to page 598 for the Mourner's Kaddish. And again, we have everyone in our community who is mourning the Shabbat in mind, be it people in the Shiva period, the Shloshim period, a Yartzeit, or anyone else who is mourning. Please rise in body or in spirit with me for Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yizgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. V'yama dibra kirete v'yamlich malchute v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei rab amevarach le'olam omei omaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitala shmei d'kedusha brichu le'elamin kol berchata v'sharata tush b'chata v'nechamata Daminan Be'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Israel v'yimru Amen. Oseh Shalom ben Ramav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom aleinu v'al kol Israel v'yimru Amen. You may be seated. Before we conclude services with Ein Kelohenu, just a few announcements, which is really one big announcement, is that Passover is starting in a week from today. And TBT has all sorts of wonderful events starting this Wednesday, running through the week of Passover, opportunities both on Zoom, in person, socially distanced outside. So please check the TBT website or the TBT email for any and all of these wonderful Passover opportunities. We conclude services this morning with Ein Kelohenu,
which you can find on page 631. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemakenu, Ein Kemashienu. Non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. Mi Elohenu, mi Adonenu, mi Malkeinu, mi Moshienu. ¿Quién como nuestro Dios? ¿Quién como nuestro Señor? ¿Quién como nuestro Rey? ¿Quién como nuestro Salvador? No del Elohenu, no del Adonenu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu. Lo haremos a nuestro Dios, lo haremos a nuestro Señor, lo haremos a nuestro Rey, lo haremos a nuestro Salvador. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Bendito nuestro Dios, bendito nuestro Señor, bendito nuestro Rey, bendito nuestro Salvador. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Tú sos nuestro Dios, tú sos nuestro Señor, tú sos nuestro Rey, tú sos nuestro Salvador. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Thank you.